2024 Dynasty Superflex mock, as well as for you 1QB folks. Hang around. I got you at the end. I'm not forgetting about you. We love all formats on this channel. But with that being said, 101 in this 12-team Superflex Dynasty rookie mock, first round. Got to go Caleb Williams here. Not going to overcomplicate it. He has the raw tools, the talent, and looks like a pencil in for the 101 in the NFL draft to the Chicago Bears. Interesting landing spot, but relatively for a first overall pick, projecting, that's about as good as you can reasonably hope for. I think it's interesting with the Bears effectively not hiring yet, but just even interviewing Cliff Kingsbury. For my money, that says quite a bit. They could have, through back channels, gotten Cliff Kingsbury's input on Caleb Williams, right? In that sense, going as far as to interview, showing a bit of their cards, I think Caleb Williams is really going to be a lock for the Bears at this point. And he, for good reason, has unbelievable backyard football ability, so to speak, and should be the face of that franchise for years to come. Heard enough discourse of him, I think, at this point. I'm trying to keep it relatively short and sweet in this for you all. But with the 102, gonna go Marvin Harrison Jr. here. I think we've heard about how he's this generational receiver, right? I don't know, maybe we use generational a little bit too much, too many, excuse me. Do you guys think it's overused? I feel like we get a little bit over our head over our heels here. With Marv, look, I think he is a bona fide stud. He's got the counting stats. He is going to be a top 4 pick. I think that's a lock. Patriots, Cardinals. I could see the Patriots maybe going with Marv, but I think their needs are very, very, very too much ultimately at the quarterback position that I can't in good conscience think that they're going to go for Marvin Harrison Jr. Hence, I think the Cardinals are a bit more likely, and that would be an awesome landing spot in theory. But regardless of where he might go, I think Marvin Harrison is enough of a talent where it's not going to matter really who's throwing it to him. He even showed that to degrees with Kyle McCord this year, instead of having CJ Stroud, who's been, top 3 MVP level. Incredible rookie season for CJ Stroud and the Texans. But 103, at 103, I'm going Jaden Daniels here. With Jaden Daniels, look, he has unbelievable skill as both a deep ball thrower and that type of explosive play, as well as on the ground. You hear the Lamar Jackson comps, and really the insane comps of the top 3 for that matter at the quarterback position. With Caleb Williams, aforementioned, the 101, you hear Pat Mahomes. With Jaden Daniels, it's Lamar Jackson. And with Drake May, who we'll get into soon, you hear about Justin Herbert. In the Narrative Notebook quarterback video I just did, you are going to hear these comps left, right, and center for these 3 quarterbacks. With Jaden Daniels in particular, he is such a game-breaking talent where lightning in a bottle, that whole LSU offense almost, if you will, incredible skill players. But Jaden Daniels, certainly at the helm, deserves so much credit. Heisman winning season. I think he's looking like he's not going to slip out of the top 3 at this point. I almost want to say a guarantee. Charles Barkley meme, if you know what I mean. But with Jaden Daniels, look, you've got the Commanders and the Patriots. Both need a quarterback. And with the 3 at the top here, I just think we're going to see 3 go in the real draft. 1, 2, 3. Jaden Daniels being 103 in the Superflex rookie mock. Incredible player to have at the 103. Easily can say that. But moving on to the 104, we just mentioned him with Drake May here. With Drake May, I'm very high on Drake May. I just think with the other 3 players, they're awesome, incredible in their own right. And with the quarterbacks, it's almost like you got to choose your flavor. With Drake May, he had a bit of a down year. I don't want to say he regressed. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, not playing with the most high-end talent at UNC. He didn't have a Josh Downs this season, right? He didn't have Tez Walker, who's another guy who you might see in this mock, you might not. But Tez Walker, a Kent State transfer, he didn't even get eligibility due to some waiver rules by the NCAA and their horrible, horrible history of decision-making. Didn't get him till about mid-season. So with Drake May, I'm not trying to be a Drake May apologist here, but he has unbelievable traits. And Herbert, aforementioned in the comp, Josh Allen even, as a very, very upper echelon, high ceiling, 90th percentile comp, he can move, he can throw it. Drake May, top 3 draft capital, looks like it's, again, a pencil that in for between the Patriots and the Commanders. And quite honestly, a little bit of foreshadowing, I'm not worried. Maybe it'll come back to bite me. I'm not worried if he goes, him or Jaden Daniels for that matter, to one of these tougher landing spots. We have to be landing spot agnostic with quarterbacks especially. Maybe it's a hot take, but that's what I wholeheartedly believe here. And with Drake May, you're getting a hell of a player at the 104 here. And that trend honestly continues. It honestly continues with the supreme skill and talent onto the 105 with Malik Nabers, who, look, I've said in my receiver rankings video, he's in the same tier as Marvin Harrison Jr., in my view, for my money. A bit of a hot take, but I really don't think it is. We know Marvin Harrison, how good he is, right? With Malik, he is so, again, not to beat a dead horse, be too redundant here, incredibly explosive, like Jaden Daniels. I mean, they among the leaders in all of college football in big plays, right? 20-plus yard plays. With Malik Nabers, you're hearing DJ Moore comps. You're hearing even Antonio Brown, shades of prime Antonio Brown, not post NFL Antonio Brown or back end, couple end of his career. Not that Antonio Brown. Good Steelers Antonio Brown, who was the game breaker, fantasy #1 overall scorer at times. I mean, Malik Nabers, he's an incredible, incredible talent, and getting him here at the 105, it's unreal. It's unbelievable. A guy who, look, if he runs a 4.3 at the combine, I think in terms of media narratives, right, we talk about that, you're only going to hear him and really this next guy at the 106 with Rome Odunze. Look, Daniel Jeremiah just made a mock draft. He's got Rome Odunze 5th overall, right behind Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's said in his podcast he's got the same grade for Rome Odunze and Marv. Excuse me. Rome Odunze, look, we saw his playoff performances, the clutch play in games, big-time moments leading up to that. He decided to come back to school in 2023, and boy, did he make himself some money. A top 10 pick, pencil that in with Rome Odunze. And here at the 106, it's just awesome. It is awesome to be able to have this caliber player who's going to be having this type of draft capital investment, even a relatively good situation. If he goes to, again, with Malik Nabers and Rome Odunze, I've identified, look, the 5, 6, 7 range, potentially higher, we'll see, but the 5, 6, 7, that sweet spot of the Chargers, Giants, Titans. With receivers, again, like quarterbacks, I'm not going to get hung over on landing spots and where exactly they might be catching passes. They're sheer talents who have produced and are on a crash course to produce at the NFL level. You hear about comps for Rome. Shout out to Ray G. He has said Jumbo Chris Olave. I've heard Mel Kiper take that with a grain of salt, I guess, but Mad Mel, Jamar Chase is his comp. And I can only imagine with Daniel Jeremiah what he might reveal later. down the line in his comps, right? In his final workups, right? But with Roma Dunze, again, incredible player here at the 106. Moving on to, well, who's at the 107? At the 107, I got Brock Bowers. I got Brock Bowers at the 107. He is a incredible tight end prospect. Better than Kyle Pitts for my money. Better than Kyle Pitts. Okay? He's done it for 3 years at Georgia. He's been a multiple-time Mackey Award winner for the best in all of college football, which was a no-brainer designation for the last several seasons. He will eat up targets, be a red zone threat, be even a jet sweep type threat. He's an unbelievable athlete. Really interested to see, his measurables, what he might do at the combine to further kind of put a stamp of approval, for the Dynasty darling, moniker. Not quite maybe as highly regarded as Kyle Pitts because of how much of a unicorn he was athletically, but with Brock Bowers, man, and he's a bit of a victim of the 6 players that have gone before him in this, but nonetheless, he's an incredible player, incredible talent. You think of, again, the Chargers as a potential landing spot at 5. I've got the Titans also identified at 7, and then potentially even the Jets at number 10. These are all workable landing spots. And with a special talent like Brock Bowers, he walks in, bar maybe a couple less than one hand tight ends that you could count. He walks into tight end 1 role, carves up a considerable impact role immediately in the NFL, regardless of where he goes. He's going to get top 10 draft capital. I believe that. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I really don't think that's going to be the case here. Brock Bowers, he rounds out really the silky 7. I'll kind of coin that term. The silky 7 in Superflex drafts. Maybe the 7 heaven. Really bad take. I don't know if that sounds right. Let me know if what you guys think of that in the comments, that description. But I just want to emphasize how unbelievable the top 7 of this draft are. And not to really take away as we move on here, starting at the 108, look, we actually returned to quarterback with Bo Nix. Bo Nix, man, I included him in my early mocks, kind of took him out, wasn't in my top 12 first round for my last mock draft. And look, I'll be honest. I'll be straightforward. I kind of fell a little bit into the maybe recency bias, drinking some perception Kool-Aid of, oh my God, well, Bo Nix, he didn't lead his team to a Pac-12 title. He wasn't playing in end of December, early January. I kind of fell victim to that. I did. But look, with Bo Nix, he is a talented guy. I saw him play when he was at Auburn some 4 odd years ago. He's a totally different player. He's got the experience, and he's got the Senior Bowl coming up, as well as Michael Penix. The opportunity to really shoot up draft boards, and teams are going to love some experience and some knowledge to potentially step right in to an NFL team and start day 1. We're looking here, I think, outside of the top 10, but kind of beginning early teens-ish. You're looking at the Vikings, the Broncos, the Raiders. Hell, I've even seen, look, Jeremiah just mocked him to the Saints at 14 or 15. Regardless, there is a sweet spot here, like a quarterback speed zone of teams, multiple teams that are in desperate need of a franchise quarterback, some youth at the position who can inject just a change of life and some hope for change in that franchise. And especially with, look, the Vikings, with Kevin O'Connell, there was a lot of rumors with him and his interest in Anthony Richardson. Totally different prospects with Bo Nix here. Bo Nix, he kind of gets a bad rap, especially for the placement, or actually just the sheer distribution of his passes, a lot at or behind the line of scrimmage, or not, 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, so to speak. But regardless of depth, average depth of target, he gets it done at a high level. Unbelievable stats this year. Stats obviously are not everything at all, but he's played at such a high level. And just some food for thought. Look at Brock Purdy, right? Look at Brock Purdy. Similar position where you just execute what's asked of you. Excuse me. You execute what's asked of you. And that's all you can do. And it's led to win after win after win. With Bo Nix, he actually has dual threat ability. I think people overlook that. He can move. He can move on the ground. He had double-digit rushing touchdowns, not this past year, but in 2022. The guy's got the potential, and I really think he's going to be destined for the first round, potentially as early as the middle, early teens, kind of middle of the first round, which, man, that's still a great option here at the 108. At the 109, look, I'm going another quarterback here in J.J. McCarthy. I think he's, the most polarizing player with J.J. McCarthy here in the Dynasty community, in the NFL draft, I think, community maybe to some degree too, but maybe not really, because constantly you're hearing folks say, Dane Brugler, I think in particular, The Athletic, and not just him, but this idea of J.J. McCarthy has some fans around the NFL. He is a winner, like Bo Nix, right? That's obviously not everything. Win-loss stats especially are not meant to be quarterback end-all be-all descriptors, right? I hope not. That's not how we should operate by any means. But you can't put it against him in the same breath. He's led his team to a national championship. He, again, similar to Bo Nix, operated to the extent that he needed to within that Michigan offense. Obviously, their identity with Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, of course, eligible for this year's draft. A huge ground game attack with Michigan, but J.J. McCarthy, you're hearing things about good processor. He's got athleticism. He can be a dual threat guy. And again, the pre-draft process will be very interesting with J.J. McCarthy in particular. And I've listed here the Vikings, the Broncos, the Raiders for some fits, as I did with Bo Nix. But I want to be clear with J.J. McCarthy, and maybe even Michael Penix, too. I think you're going to see with those three teams, and I'll even throw the team that's not listed here, the Falcons, with picks 42, 43, 44, early second round, I think there is a decently high chance that one team, if they don't pick a quarterback with their first round pick, right? With these teams, I could very well see it move up from the low 40s to the early 30s, or maybe even the late 20s, to be able to snag a J.J. McCarthy here. And just for the sake, obviously, the benefit of with quarterbacks and the contract purposes and just the fifth-year option, right? The benefit of a fifth-year option with the NFL and contractually, financial obligations that might either be initiated early if they're drafted later than the first, or you have that more of a security and potentially championship window with the 5 years that you get if you'd pick somebody in the first round. And with J.J. McCarthy, I think also we have to take into account with his age, him being only 20 years old, give or take, to be able to just develop in the NFL on that first 5-year contract. He's going to be, look, it's going to take not till year 3 where he's the age of Bo Nix now. Same as Michael Penix's age, excuse me. With JJ, he, I think, has the benefit of being as young as he is, an early declare, right? Only 3 years. That's attractive to NFL teams in the sense that, look, he's not as conditioned as a Bo Nix, right? Not as conditioned where, look, I want to be clear, experience can be a plus, right? And I think it is for Bo Nix and Michael Penix. But with J.J. McCarthy, the inexperience, but not as much inexperience as just potential, to be molded, a piece of clay to be molded by NFL coaches and developers, right? Because that's the name of the game in the first round with any pick. You have to have talent developers to get the most out of these draft picks, or else you're just getting college players. You need to get NFL players, right? And that whole development with JJ McCarthy, because he's so young and because, look, he hasn't maybe been so exposed to maybe different systems or different playbooks year after year, different schools. He's only been at Michigan, right? I think it's just some interesting factors that do play into JJ McCarthy's favor here. And with him projecting to be a first-round pick, I've got to have him here at the 109 in the Superflex mock. But moving on to the 110, and really the last three picks, the 110 through the 112. Folks, we're getting into Quentin Johnston syndrome territory. And let me tell you, do not be overcome by that. Don't let the notion of, a big receiver, how can they produce at the next level? Do not fear. I'm here to help with Dynasty Psych. But getting into this, with the 110, I've got Brian Thomas Jr. With Brian Thomas, he, again, all LSU players on offense, they're seemingly made in a factory with how explosive they are. 6'4", 205 for Brian Thomas. He's looking like he's going to run a 4.3 almost guaranteed. He really had a deep threat type of role within LSU. He is going to be a difference maker at the next level. And he's almost at this point a consensus wide receiver 4, it seems like, within the scouting communities. And look, I'm going to recognize him accordingly with projected draft capital on the landing spots here. I'm looking at the Saints, the Colts, the Jags, really in that middle quarter, that sweet spot of around, I think, the 14 through 21 range. And look, that's going to be very well before any receiver that got picked in 2023, Quentin Johnston's draft. But don't get me wrong, that's not at all the kind of comparison I'm making here. Because he's going to get better draft capital. We don't know the draft capital, right? We do know the performance he put on the field in his draft eligible year, this 2023, as we saw what Quentin Johnston did in 2022. Hang along for another minute or two, and I'm going to give you some interesting food for thought. Not the smoking gun. I don't want to say that. I don't want to just say in hindsight, 2020, this is the reason. Just some interesting context I'll give you. But with Brian Thomas, 110 here, it's good. I think it's, again, very intriguing value. Very, very good option, considering we're at the very end of the first round here almost. But with the 111, Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman here at the 111. We're talking maybe the Jags, the Bengals, the Eagles. So really around 20-ish, beginning in that bottom third, I would say, the first round. And with Keon in particular, man, I think he's the guy that's getting the Quentin Johnston syndrome. That direct kind of comparison is trying to be attached, trying to be made with him. And I don't think that's fair at all for Keon Coleman. I really don't. I think you see a guy that can really just go up and get the ball and be a matchup nightmare with the physicality, with him being a former Tom Izzo guard at Michigan State, a college basketball background. You think of just the positioning, the kind of sure hands, just be able to go up, high point the ball. He's a real threat with Keon Coleman in particular. He is going to get first round draft capital. I'm going to go out on a ledge and say that. We'll check back in a couple months, but I'm really firmly of that opinion. And I think, look, he's got as good of an opportunity as anybody to go out there and perform at the combine in this pre-draft process. But with Keon Coleman, he a relative touchdown machine. And there's a lot to like with him. But wrapping up the 112 and then getting into some more Quentin Johnston syndrome conversation, A.D. Mitchell. Again, these are 3 straight guys that are 6'4", 200-ish odd and some change pounds. A.D. Mitchell, man, I love me some A.D. Mitchell. I've identified, look, I think the Eagles, Chiefs, Bills, kind of the back end of the first round, which is an incredible opportunity when you think of, look, playoff teams, what's the common denominator? They're going to have a quarterback. They're going to have somebody to throw to for these receivers, for these first round rookie picks. And with A.D. Mitchell, he's really a smooth operator, a smooth mover for his size at 6'4", and really a hybrid of a red zone threat. We saw that toward the end of the year, especially. Red zone threat, and just good route runner for his size, and just in keeping with this theme of these first round receivers, an ability to win at the next level, a game that will translate. Quentin Johnston's did not. That much is clear. I want to kind of do a little bit of a interesting, maybe first segment here in the history of this channel, Dynasty Psych. We're doing a little bit of Dynasty Psych stats declassified. All right, okay? So, I said the word draft eligible a couple minutes ago. With this group of 3, in Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, A.D. Mitchell, particularly larger receivers, albeit somewhat slender, somewhat slim, but nonetheless, Quentin Johnston comparables? Well, Quentin Johnston, what did he do exactly in his draft eligible year in 2022? He had 1,000 yards. He had some touchdowns, right? But I want to just kind of key in on one specific area of the football field. I want to talk about the red zone. We love the channel, but NFL teams love to capitalize and score in that area. Quentin Johnston, in 2022, in his final year at TCU, in the red zone, he had a total, I'm not exaggerating this, a total of 4 catches for 12 yards. Now, I'm glad you asked. What did Ryan Thomas, Keon Coleman, and A.D. Mitchell do inside the red zone, in the area where your team needs you the most, where space is at a premium and points are treasured? Well, look, with Brian Thomas, he, in the red zone this year, we're talking 7 catches for 48 yards, 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns compared to the 0 touchdowns that Quentin Johnston had in the red zone his final year. 7, 48, and 5. Who also had 7, 48, and 5? I feel like this is kind of Illuminati. Keon Coleman, I'm not kidding you. Keon Coleman had the exact same red zone performance as Brian Thomas Jr. did this year. I'm not lying to you. Got the screenshots popping up right here to prove it to you. 7, 48, and 5 for Keon Coleman performance in the red zone. Again, 5 touchdowns as opposed to 0 for Quentin Johnston in his final year at TCU. Last, but certainly not least, A.D. Mitchell, Adonai, his full name. Just want to pay respect to his family. And, of course, the name that he was given at birth. With A.D. Mitchell, inside the red zone, where it matters most. Space is at a premium. And of course, as a route runner and the size he has, that combination, ooh, man, our team's going to be envisioning the 9 catches, 79 yards, 8 touchdowns in the red zone from A.D. Mitchell. 8 touchdowns on 9 catches in the red zone. I mean, that is, you want to talk about efficiency. That's unbelievable production. Unbelievable. And that's production. That's a role that will be there for any receiver, for anybody that walks into the NFL. Just let's let this sink in. Quentin Johnston, what he produced, or lack thereof, in his final year at TCU, his draft-eligible year, really chanced to leave a mark. Versus what these 3 larger receivers did. Folks, I rest my case. But thanks for sticking around. If you did, we got a 1QB mock draft. And I cannot thank you enough for, if you're a real one, if you made it this far and you like your 1QB content. But quick fire here. Look, in keeping with the relative order of the Superflex mock I just did, 101, we're talking Marvin Harrison Jr., 102, Malik Neighbors, 103, Rome Odunze, 104, Brock Bowers. And so then I think that kind of core 4, if you will, or fearsome foursome. And let me know how you guys feel about that designation, that name, that nickname, if you will. That top 4 in 1QB drafts is incredible. Incredible, right? Just kind of less, take out the 3 quarterbacks, the silky 7, right, of Superflex. In 1QB leagues, a fearsome foursome. Incredible. 105, look, the talent certainly doesn't stop there. 105, we've got Brian Thomas Jr. making an appearance again, followed by Keon Coleman, A.D. Mitchell, the trio that we just mentioned. And then 108, look, this is where I think it gets interesting. And I especially, in a 1QB type league, I got to shoot for the stars for the 1 quarterback I get to start. And I got to go with Jaden Daniels here at the 108. The sheer upside, you got to prioritize. You just got to prioritize it in a 1QB league. 109, Xavier Legette. 110, Troy Franklin. 111, Tez Walker. With those receivers, look, that's another cluster that I think I'm fairly confident in getting top 50 draft capital. Draft capital that is significant. And even if it's not the benefit of a first round pick investment, look, you're talking about potential Carolina, New England, Washington, LA, if they don't pick a receiver, Tennessee, New York. You're talking about places that are just in dire need of somebody to come in and make a difference. So there's certainly going to be opportunity there, and certainly attractive at the back end of this first round of 1QB league. But last but not least in the 1QB league, I can't leave out Caleb Williams here. I got to just include him here at the 112. He's got upside too. Don't forget about him. Just not as dynamic, obviously, sheer ground game potential, rushing upside as a Jaden Daniels, but his talent, I got to recognize it. He rounds out this first round of this 1QB mock draft. Let me know for my 1QB players out there what you guys think of this. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of experience in 1QB leagues outside of redraft, but this is just my 2 cents. Curious to hear yours in the comments. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you hung around, type in QJ syndrome, ? In the comments. But regardless of what you may or may not comment, I love interacting with everybody. And I look forward to keeping the content going and flowing. I take all recommendations in the comments. But with all that, I'll stop yapping. Have a great one. See you in the next one.